in over 400.
Here are live impact news on WCNC Plus. Jane Monreal joining you right now. We're not only streaming the State of the County address, but as promised, North Carolina Governor Josh Stein announcing his 2025 to 27 budget proposal in Raleigh. We are going to that as he is also joined by the Budget Director, Kristen Walker. This is live impact news on WCNC Plus.
Lowering costs. Too many families can't afford bare necessities like groceries, housing, health care. So we have to lower costs whenever we can. That's why my budget proposes $60 million to leverage private sector and federal funds to build more affordable housing and to incentivize local governments to update their zoning plans to encourage more construction. We have a lot of people moving to North Carolina. That means that demand for housing is increasing, prices are going up. So we have to increase the supply of homes to meet that newfound demand. We also have to lower the cost of child care. When we invest in the youngest North Carolinians, we set them up for a lifetime of educational success. We also help parents who want to stay in the workforce. It's counterintuitive, but too many North Carolinians cannot afford to go to work. That's because they can't afford child care if they can find it at all. Getting pushed out of the workforce hurts our workers, and it hurts our businesses and the economy to the tune of approximately $5 billion a year in lost economic activity. My budget proposes increasing child care subsidy rates across the state so providers can increase the salaries of their child care workers, expanding pre-K across North Carolina by 1,000 new slots so that more kids show up to kindergarten ready to learn, and creating summertime enrichment programs for those children before they start kindergarten so they are really ready on that first day of school. Housing and child care are two massive costs weighing on many families, but they're not the only ones. Too many families are struggling to make ends meet and cover necessities. That's why in my budget I am cutting taxes to put more money into the pockets of middle-class families. My budget proposes 3 tax cuts for working families, a child and dependent care tax cut to further help parents afford the cost of child care, a child tax credit to help offset additional expenses associated with raising a child, diapers, medicine, anything that parents need, and a working families tax cut available to all low to moderate income workers, which could mean up to $1,600 a year for certain families. These investments and these tax cuts are what it means to truly be pro-family. Setting our children up for success is also pro-family. We can strengthen our public schools by attracting and keeping high-quality teachers, prioritizing educational best practices, and doing everything we can to keep kids safe and well-fed. Right now, North Carolina's starting teacher pay is the second lowest in the Southeast, lower than every state that borders North Carolina, including South Carolina. My budget will make starting teacher salaries in North Carolina the highest in the Southeast, while also raising wages for experienced teachers and bringing back master's pay. By expanding the Advanced Teacher Initiative, it also gives our best teachers more responsibility to make sure our kids are learning, while also providing them a career pathway that doesn't require them to leave the classroom. That way we can address our teacher shortage and encourage our high-quality teachers to stay in the profession. We also want to extend the gains from adopting the science of reading method to our middle schools to make sure that all of our children who graduate high school can read and read well. My budget also proposes several investments that create conditions for success at school by helping kids be healthier, more focused, and safer. When students are hungry, when they're sitting at their desk and their belly is grumbling, they don't focus as well. They don't learn as well. So we are proposing free school breakfast for every North Carolina student to improve attendance, to improve health, and importantly, to improve academic success. We're also going to invest in our children's mental health. We need more support staff in our public schools, like counselors, nurses, psychologists, and social workers to address mental health challenges that too many young people are experiencing. My budget will hire more of all of these people. Our kids need to put their studies first, and they need a break from the demand of social media. So my budget proposes that we make our classrooms cell phone-free zones. Additionally, we have to keep kids safe when they're at school. So we will help secure school buildings from those who would do harm. One final piece of student well-being are the buildings themselves. Too many of our schools are old, overcrowded, use trailers, have leaking roofs, broken heating and air. We need safer, healthier, and more modern schools, so I'm proposing a $4 billion bond for North Carolina's public schools. If the members of the General Assembly have any hesitation, it is easy. Let the voters decide. Let's put it on the ballot. Many of these investments I've already outlined are part of the most important job that a government does, and that's to keep the people safe. Investing in safety requires investing in the professionals who protect us. Law enforcement officers put themselves in harm's way to keep our communities safe, but widespread vacancies in law enforcement make it harder for them to do their jobs. We must make strategic investments to recruit and retain law enforcement. My budget proposes raising the salaries of all state law enforcement officers with a particular eye toward correctional officers and youth counselors. It also offers signing bonuses for basic law enforcement training graduates and out-of-state transfers who are hired here in North Carolina, whether by state or local law enforcement. Filling vacancies and making law enforcement a more attractive profession enhances the public safety. So does tackling the scourges of the opioid and fentanyl crisis. While North Carolina has made progress in reducing fentanyl overdose deaths, still too many people are dying. That's why I'm seeking a fentanyl control unit of law enforcement and prosecutors to investigate and stop the flow of this deadly poison into our communities. Too many North Carolinians have lost a loved one to a drug overdose or a senseless crime, and we honor the victims by tackling this head on. Sexual assault is a heinous crime. We've made tremendous strides in holding offenders accountable when we finally eliminated the backlog of older, untested rape kits. But we've got to finish the job. That's why my budget calls for a sexual assault cold case unit at the SBI to take the evidence that's now been tested and use it to put more offenders behind bars and finally deliver justice to victims. I'm also calling for more gun locks and gun safes to protect children from firearm fatalities. Behavioral health crisis response teams to reduce public safety risks when law enforcement respond to a mental health crisis. And more than 3,300 body cameras for law enforcement to create objective evidence that helps further investigations and enhances the public trust. Let's keep our families safe, and that's exactly what my budget will do. Let's also keep them healthy. Accessing quality, affordable health care is a major challenge for too many North Carolina families, particularly those who live in rural North Carolina. My budget increases access to primary care and OBGYNs and supports rural health clinics that provide physical and dental care to people who need them. It also invests in clean air and clean water with a focus on funding stormwater infrastructure to reduce the risk of flooding going forward. It increases our state's focus on behavioral health so that we're tackling health and safety issues at the same time. And it also reduces cost to Medicaid by expanding the Healthy Opportunities Program that supports beneficiaries with non-medical interventions that make them healthier and reduce health care expenditures over time. Our goals are so important. Building an economy that works for everyone, strengthening our public schools and workforce, supporting families, keeping people safe and healthy. We cannot afford to waste a penny. So as we are making these investments, we have a responsibility to be smart about how we invest taxpayer dollars. We have to get the maximum public benefit from every single dollar that we invest. So I'm establishing an impact center at the Office of State Budget and Management, which will make our work more efficient and more effective. It's also why I'm sounding the alarm about our state's pending fiscal cliff. A budget shortfall these days in North Carolina is kind of hard to wrap your head around. We're a growing state. The economy is relatively strong, so it just doesn't make sense. But the truth is that we are in for some self-inflicted fiscal pain. 2 years from now, according to the consensus forecast created jointly by the legislative fiscal staff and the Office of State Budget and Management, North Carolina will face an $800 million loss in revenue because of pre-programmed tax giveaways, mainly to wealthy individuals and to corporations. We have nearly $10 billion of scheduled tax giveaways over the next 4 years alone, even though we've already got a very competitive tax climate here in North Carolina. Kristen will follow my presentation with more details about this issue, but know this, that if we go through with these tax breaks, predominantly for the wealthy, we will be undermining critical elements of what makes North Carolina such an incredible state. So I'm simply calling on the General Assembly to freeze them, not to raise them, just freeze them. Just maintaining the current level of individual and corporate tax rate rather than recklessly walking to the edge of the fiscal cliff and then stepping off it. Understand, North Carolina's corporate income tax rate is the lowest in the country of the 44 states that have one. And if you go back and look at the debates that occurred when the reduction in corporate income tax first began, it was all because North Carolina had the highest corporate income tax rate in the Southeast, and we just wanted to not stick out like a sore thumb. We are the lowest in the country. We do not need to be giving these tax breaks to corporate shareholders who are not even North Carolinians, many of whom are not even American. Between investing in the education and health of North Carolina's children or giving money to corporate shareholders, the vast majority of whom are not North Carolinian, many of whom are not American, that choice is easy. I will choose North Carolina's children every single time. I also want to say a few words about the ongoing Hurricane Helene recovery efforts. I am eager to sign a bill that sends resources to Western North Carolina. I requested $1 billion in relief earlier this year. The House passed a $524 million bill yesterday, and I hope and believe that the Senate will pass it today. I want to thank the legislature for this bill because it will enable us to get started on many important aspects of disaster recovery, but we have to be honest that the amount is inadequate, and this is just the start. We are looking at $60 billion in damages in Western North Carolina. By a factor of 3, the most damaging storm in North Carolina history. So I will be submitting an additional Helene budget request to the General Assembly shortly in the weeks to come, and keep pushing Congress for meaningful help. And I look forward to working with the legislature and our congressional delegation to get this work done. North Carolina is strong because our people are strong. But we have to work to maintain our strength so that future generations also have a fair shot at a brighter future in the state that we all love. That's why in my balanced budget, I am proposing tax cuts for middle-class families to put more money in their pockets. free community college for people getting trained to work in the high-paying jobs of today and tomorrow, lower child care costs for our families, the highest starting teacher pay in the Southeast, and more police on the beat to keep us safe. To me, each of these commitments is delivering on the promise of North Carolina that where you come from should never limit how far you can go. I'm grateful to the General Assembly for its consideration of the budget, and I look forward to working with them in the coming weeks so that we can do right by North Carolina's children and North Carolina's families. Happy to take some questions if there are any.
What do you make of the argument we're hearing from Republicans in the legislature that the growth of North Carolina's economy will ultimately take care of those revenue projections and we won't see the deficits that are in the current revenue forecast?
Kristen will tackle this issue in greater detail in her presentation, but I'll just say this. There are three options. Either the consensus revenue forecast is accurate and we're facing an $800 million shortfall 2 years from now. Either they think revenues are going to come in greater than they are and the deficit is even greater because we have less revenue. But here's the kicker. If revenue comes in more than what is anticipated, we will have even less than we would under either two circumstances because there are tax cuts that are pre-programmed into the code that if revenues come in at a certain level, tax rates will fall on corporate and personal income tax holders, payers, which means that we will have even less revenue. This is in a state that is fast growing, the third fastest growing state in the country since the last census, after Texas and Florida, and in which we, of course, see inflation causing issues. It also causes issues for the state, and we are in a very uncertain.
All right, everybody, coming up on 11 o'clock, Jane Monreal here, live stream there with the governor and the budget proposal for the North Carolina state budget there for the next couple of years, 2025 to 27. You can continue streaming this here, but Charlotte Today is going to come up on the mainstream. Join us again at 4 for your local news and weather. Have a great day.
Because of differences over Medicaid, do you think it can be any different with you a Democrat and the Republicans in charge, and especially given the fact that they no longer have in numbers a veto-proof majority?
Yeah, well, I certainly hope not. I have been encouraged by the conversations I've been having with the leadership in both the House and the Senate, and I think these priorities make all the sense in the world for North Carolina families, and I know they want to do right by the people of North Carolina as well. So we look forward to engaging with the legislature, and hopefully we can come to an agreement.
Questions about taxes and raises. Why do you want to freeze the individual income tax deduction while adding different tax cuts? And then with the raises, you talked about law enforcement and starting teachers. What about longtime teachers and the rest of the state?
On the tax front, we're proposing about $500 million in targeted tax cuts that will help working and middle-class families. When you look at the beneficiaries of who gets the most value out of the cuts that are programmed in reducing the personal income tax, it's mainly folks who are making over $200,000. And so I want to make sure that as we cut taxes, we are doing it to help the people who are struggling the most with living expenses. What was your second question? About
the
raises.
You mentioned starting teachers,
yes,
about everybody else, and other state employees.
Yes, we will have raises for state employees. We're also proposing, in addition to a 2% raise for state employees, a $1,000 bonus to all state employees, as well as an additional day of vacation, because they work hard. And then on senior teachers, we are looking to raise teacher salaries at every level so that all teachers will see a jump in their salary. On average, it's about 10% for teachers, but there's a weighting of that increase for starting teacher pay simply because we're the lowest in the second lowest in the Southeast, and we've got to address the pipeline of bringing more educators into the profession because there's a weighting towards more senior experienced teachers who, when they retire, we need to make sure we have good teachers to come in behind them.
What do you say to those state employees who think 2% doesn't keep up with inflation? It's usually what the Republican budget writers propose, more in that range.
Yeah.
Why only 2%?
Well, I wish we had more. We're already seeing budget constraints in the second year of this biennium because of these pre-programmed tax giveaways. And so I wish that there were more money. I want to pay state employees more. They deserve more. I know how hard folks work. I've worked in state government for a very long time and am always incredibly grateful for what everyone's doing. That's why we're coming up with a $1,000 bonus on top of the 2% increase. There's also a very technical program that allows departments to do salary adjustments where they can make targeted increases for certain segments of their workforce who are particularly in demand in the private sector. Laura.
Well, I just wanted to ask, you're talking about 2% increase for state employees. You say you wish we had more money, but then, and this is factoring in a freeze of the tax rate, the tax cuts, right? So what would you like to see?
Well, I would like to be able to give state employees a wage increase that meets their needs, that factors in inflation, that pays them a lot more money, that values them. We have too high vacancies right now in state government, about 20% vacancy rate. So yes, I wish there were revenues to do that.
Just to follow up, does your budget address vouchers?
It does. On public school vouchers, we are for people above $115,000 in income, the program ends. These are folks who can choose what to do, where to send their children to school for themselves. If you are less than $115,000 in income, your child can keep the voucher as long as your child wants to stay in private school or you want your child to stay in private school until they graduate. But there'll be no new vouchers issued because we don't have enough money to meet the needs of the public, and public dollars should go to public schools. We have to raise, we're 48th in the country in what we invest on a per pupil basis in public schools. We're a fast-growing state. We have increasing student enrollment. We have to meet the needs of our public school students, and that's where I think those funds should go. Right.
I had two questions, one on teacher pay raises. So it would go from 41K to 53K for starting teachers, and that's a 29% increase. And then the additional 10% raise you're talking about is on top of that.
No. The 10% raise is on average across the spectrum.
Okay.
So we're obviously putting more money on the front end to address the deficiency in starting teacher pay.
And are there any tax cuts for individuals without children? I know you talked about trying to target this to working families, anything for working individuals without children.
Yeah, the working families tax cut can also be for a family of one. So if you're a working person and you meet the income thresholds, you can also benefit from that tax cut.
Can you expand a little bit on this impact center you outlined? What do you see sort of being the function of that center within OSBM on a day-to-day basis? What do you envision them doing in terms of looking at spending?
They work closely with different state agencies, and they're going to examine how they operate. Are we operating in the most efficient way, whether it's procurement? Are we contracting in a way that makes sense to get the lowest value, not just for an agency, but across state government? Are we using IT as efficiently as we can to make sure that we're maximizing the return on those investments? Are we using our real estate effectively? Is there some real estate that the state doesn't need and should sell to the private sector or to whomever in order to get revenues in? So they are going to be working closely with state agencies, all with the eye of, are we delivering services to the people of North Carolina as efficiently and as well as we can?
Do you foresee some overlap with the duties of the state auditor there? Is that going to be a cooperative effort, or do you see this as something distinct?
It's something that we do, we should be doing. I think anyone who operates any kind of organization or business should constantly be asking themselves, are you doing it well? We value the role of the auditor in making sure that our programs run efficiently, but also run well, and that there aren't problems. So we work collaboratively with Auditor Bullock and look forward to continuing to do so.
Okay, we're going to have one more question.
Okay. They're on, my comms team's on message. Yes, Gary.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry. Any last questions?
Going once.
We have seen talk of casinos, expanded gambling, as a thought to raise revenue. What are your thoughts on whether increased gaming or gambling should be a part of the equation to raise revenues?
Yeah, I think there are other stable ways of raising revenue that don't vacillate wildly and create longer-term conditions for economic success. And so that's not where I'm looking to. We've got to, I'm not looking to raise taxes. Understand this. Let's just freeze them because we are a growing state. We will have more revenues as long as we are not senselessly just giving it away when we have really important investments to make in the health and well-being of children, and the safety of communities, and the strength of our workforce. These are critical investments to make so that North Carolina continues to be a state where we all want to live and raise our families and call home. Let's not blow it. Let's, in fact, invest in it and make it even stronger, because this is a great place. Thank you all very much.
We've got more for you coming up.
Thanks, Chris. Good luck.
Good morning, everybody. We're getting books passed out. So I will let folks get that. No? Okay. So thank you all. My name is Kristen Walker. It's my honor to serve as the State Budget Director. I want to take a moment up front. Right now is not an easy time to be in public service, but I have had a wonderful last couple of months meeting with every single state agency, hearing from them about their needs and seeing just how dedicated they all are to state service. I am no more thankful to anyone than the fabulous team at the Office of State Budget and Management, who have worked so hard and tirelessly to put this budget together. And I also want to thank Governor Stein's team, who have been here for just 2.5 months, but have really dug in and are addressing the needs of our state. So today, I'm going to go over with you a state outlook. We're going to learn about population and the economy, what the economic outlook looks like, talk about revenues. You just heard the governor talk quite a bit about revenues. Go over in more detail Governor Stein's budget priorities, and then there will be some time for Q&A. Happy to answer all your questions. As the governor mentioned, there is not a Helene recovery proposal in this budget. We expect to release that later this spring. In part, we're waiting to see what the General Assembly does, but we also don't want to conflate the needs of Helene survivors with the ongoing 2-year budget process that we're doing. Helene survivors deserve separate attention, which we will do at a later point in time. So our population is growing. You heard the governor say it. We are large. We exceeded 11 million people last year. We are getting larger. 350 people move here every single day, and this growth is spread out across our state. So 74 out of 100 counties are growing. That was not the story just a few years ago. Growth was far more concentrated in fewer counties, but we do have widespread growth across the state. And I can't overemphasize how important migration to our state is. Almost 95% of our growth is driven by people who want to move here. And so that is critically important. And that's going to be critically important for Helene. These population impacts don't yet account for that. But we know that if recovery is slow and prolonged, we will have population loss in Western North Carolina. It's highly dependent upon our recovery efforts. So we are all focused on that. So for every one person we have retiring right now, retirement age 60 to 64, the number of people in North Carolina entering that prime working age 20 to 24 has dropped to almost 1 to 1. 75 years ago, that would have been 3 to 1, and you can see the sort of steady decline we've had. Just can't emphasize enough how dependent we are to keep our economy strong on that in-migration of folks coming here from other states, and also how important it is for us to develop this workforce and to have childcare and other things that this workforce demands and needs to raise a family in North Carolina. Looking at our economic our economic outlook, you heard about how strong our economy is. Our job growth is steady. We have the 11th largest economy in the nation. You heard the unemployment rate. It remains quite low at 3.7%. We are attracting investment. Companies want to come here. Last year, 17,000 new jobs announced, over $15 billion invested in a variety of industries: technology, pharmaceuticals, advanced manufacturing. Workforce, I just mentioned this. Our prime working age population is growing slower, and our wage growth is slowing somewhat, but we still expect to outpace the national average. There are a lot of economic uncertainties, though, as forecasters look to put together the state's revenue forecast. We're looking at inflation. The progress on reducing inflation has stalled. Tariffs are expected to increase prices. When we look at interest rates, the Federal Reserve rate cuts are contingent on bringing down inflation, so those two things are in tension. Longer-term interest rates have risen. We're looking at consumer behavior. Will consumers stay confident in the economy? Will they continue spending? Our economy is heavily dependent on folks continuing to spend. That's dependent on that, especially the top 10% continuing to spend, and they have seen great gains in the stock market and in their housing values. And we're concerned about federal funds. So what programs will be cut? What will the impact of the economy be for those? Really, what's the impact on unemployment? North Carolina has a number of federal workers. We have a number of industries that are dependent on federal contracts. So all of this leads to greater uncertainty as we put together this forecast. You've seen this consensus forecast before. As the governor mentioned, this is developed jointly between Office of State Budget and Management and the Fiscal Research Division. Nonpartisan economists in both offices come together to decide on these numbers. You can see that for next year, we're expecting about 0.5% growth year over year, $34.9 billion. In the year after that, we're expecting to be 2.5% under that at $34.1 billion. That's because we're going to hit the first of those income tax triggers that the governor mentioned, and our personal income tax rate will drop down to 3.49%. So that's $823 million hit in the first year. It's just half a year of that impact. Annualized, that's going to be more than $2 billion. I want to pause here for a moment because in the last 15 years that I'm doing state budgets for 20 years, I have never seen a situation where the revenue is less in the second year of the biennium than in the first. So, and really, truly, you have to go back to the Great Recession, and even then, because the way the biennial fall, you didn't really have a second-year situation. You had an 08 to an 09 drop, but that wasn't the biennium. So this is unprecedented. We've not sat down to prepare a two-year budget where there's less revenue in the second year than in the first. So let's compare that revenue to expenditures. So that's just the revenue side. Maybe that's enough revenue, right? So let's take a look at that. This blue line here shows you what we call revenue adequacy. And we start from where we are right now, 24-25. What has the General Assembly said is needed to run the state today? And we say, let's apply inflation to that, and we're going to apply consumer price index inflation, the thing you're all familiar with, that basket of goods that you hear the economists talk about. That's probably a very conservative measure of inflation for the state government, because we don't provide baskets of goods, we provide services. And the inflation rate on those are even higher, but we're going to go with what folks know. We're going to go with the more conservative inflation rate. And you just heard me talk about population growth. So population over the next 2 years will grow by more than 2%, and you see that there in that blue line. So all that blue line says is we're going to keep doing what we're doing today, and we're going to account for inflation and account for population. It doesn't say anything about new programs or anything higher, a raise that's above inflation or anything like that. It just says what does it take to keep the trains running. Then we layer on top of that, what do the forecasters think will happen with revenue? So that's your orange line. The first 2 years of this is a consensus, and I don't want to be misleading. The years after that is what the OSBM economists believe. So you see that we hit that first trigger. So the income tax is going to drop 0.5%, and you can see that we quickly fall below that revenue adequacy line. We fall below having enough money to just keep going what we have right now. But as we've heard the question already asked today, what if the economists are wrong? They don't ever really get these things exactly right. So if the economy grows a little slower than what they think, just 0.5% slower, let's say, it's what you would expect. We have even less revenue, right? Because the economy has slowed down. What if this notion that the economy will really get supercharged and they're off the wrong way, that we're going to have more economic growth than they think? Well, you can see under that scenario, that green dotted line, we're in the worst shape of any of these. Because what happens another 3 years out is we hit that second trigger, and our personal income tax rate drops again. So the more the economy grows and we hit triggers, the less revenue we will have. Looking then at our reserve balances, the General Assembly has done a lot to build up reserves. We will definitely give them credit for that. You can see that the state has almost $7.8 billion in unappropriated reserves. This is critically important when you have this much uncertainty and when you have a tax structure that is not sustainable. And so you can see here the savings reserve balances. I would remind you all that this is one-time money. This will not fix recurring problems. It is one-time money. So we took all of these pieces, and this is what we had to think about as we developed that budget, that we will have less revenue in the second year. We have to figure out how to bring those two lines, that blue line and that orange line, closer together. How are we going to do that? We have to remember Hurricane Helene recovery needs. We have to set aside funding for that. We have to think about that as we go forward. And then we have to really consider federal funds, and there's so much uncertainty there. How will that affect individual state agencies? How will it, you heard me talk about how will it affect the economy overall? But we had to balance all of these things as we put together the budget. And with that, we developed Governor Stein's budget. You've heard much of it from him. I will provide you with some more details, but really focused on these core areas of ensuring a quality education, strengthening our working families, building a strong workforce, keeping North Carolinians safe, and then operational excellence throughout state government. So first up, recruiting and retaining teachers. The goal here is to bring our starting teacher pay to the highest in the Southeast. So going from number 10 down there to number 1 within the next 2 years, so by the second year of the biennium. It's a 10.6% on average raise for all educators, with 6% for principals. There's more in here to support teachers in the critical work that they do. A $300 tax deductible stipend for teachers for supplies, a TA to teacher tuition reimbursement program, and then programs around professional development, including funding at NCAT, as well as capacity building, so sending in targeted teams for coaching at low-performing and high-poverty schools and districts. The governor didn't just look at teachers, he looked holistically at K-12 education. What are their needs? What are they facing? Worked collaboratively with the superintendent. So modern technology. During COVID, every student in the state got a device, typically some sort of Chromebook or a laptop or some sort of device to use. Those devices now, some of them are at least 4 years old. They need to be replaced. This is the way of the future. Our kids have to have, this is the same as having textbooks in the past. The cost to replace those is incredibly expensive. The governor recommends $100 million a year, with the state putting up 2/3 and locals putting up 1/3 to put these on a 4-year replacement cycle. Cybersecurity, so important everywhere, but particularly in our school systems, many of them very small and unable to cover the licensure costs for various cybersecurity tools, as well as expanding early grade literacy initiative to the middle grades. You heard the governor talk about that. This is all based on the science of reading and expanding that. This budget also eliminates the cap on exceptional children. Right now, in 86 of our 115 LEAs across the state, children who qualify for exceptional children's services cannot receive them. We're not funding them at a level high enough for that. So this eliminates that cap on those exceptional children. And then finally looks at advanced teaching roles, high dosage tutoring, as well as innovative high schools. The governor mentioned this one, free school breakfast. So everyone in a public school would be offered a free school breakfast, regardless of income. 1 in 6 children in North Carolina don't have enough food to eat. We would fund this. It's about $83.5 million out of the lottery. The lottery is set to grow by about $200 million. So this invests part of those lottery funds right here. Our children need to eat. We know that they need to be well cared for. They need teachers who are well paid. They need more school health personnel. So the governor funds 330 additional nurses, counselors, social workers, or psychologists. The governor also funds 330 new school resource officers to be placed in elementary and middle school, and he provides funding to train them so that they know how to work with the unique student population. And he also provides $10 million in grants for school safety programs. Finally, you heard the governor mention a $4 billion general obligation bond. Our schools have reported needing more than $13 billion in repair and construction costs. Under this school bond proposal, the average LEA would receive $35 million. We'd start with a base of $10 million per LEA and then add on that based on ADM. Right now, we're in interesting times. We can borrow money at a lower interest rate than we are earning right now on state money. So we can borrow 20-year right now is about 3.8%, and our STIF, where we hold the state money, is earning 4.6%. So now is the time. We haven't had a school bond in decades, and as the governor stated, these school buildings are crumbling and they need our assistance. Looking then at strengthening working families. The governor really wanted to figure out how to make our economy work for everyone, how to provide targeted tax cuts that reach those who need them most. So let's be clear, no one will pay a higher tax rate than they do now. So what you're paying today, you will not pay more. The governor was not looking to raise taxes on anyone. Working families will have more money in their pockets, and we will also stabilize state finances. You heard the governor mention the working families tax cut. That's 20% of the federal earned income tax credit. He has the child tax credit, which is up to $300 for a family of 4. The child independent care tax credit. So if you have your child or your dependent in some sort of care situation, you could receive up to a600 credit. He's proposing a back-to-school sales tax holiday. And then what we've talked about is maintaining that personal income tax rate at 4.25%. And then maintaining the corporate income tax rate at 2.25%. As you heard, that's the lowest of any of the 44 states that charge a corporate income tax rate. And the real impact of that is seen in the out years. The corporate income tax is slated by statute to go down to eventually get to 0% by 2030. So it's important that we steady that funding source now. Quality child care. You heard the governor say about folks not being able to afford to go to work. Right now, there are 80 fewer child care centers open in the state than there were a year ago. Think about that. We're in the middle of a child care crisis, a child care shortage, and centers are closing. We have 80 fewer of them. We have 48 fewer NC pre-K sites. We don't have enough for all of the demand. The demand for NC pre-K has shot up more than 225%. There are now more than 10,000 kids on the wait list for NC pre-K. The governor funds 1,000 more slots there. He pays child care providers more to help stabilize the child care industry and to help them pay livable wages. He provides a 13% on the child care subsidy rate and a 20% increase on NC pre-K rates. He also recommends funding summer wraparound services, NC pre-K summer learning. That would provide money for 300 programs so that when kids finish NC pre-K, they can stay in that program through the summer before they enter kindergarten and don't suffer as much learning loss, and also provide stability to those families with their child care needs. Affordable housing investments. So workforce housing loan program at the Housing Finance Agency would get an additional $15 million each year. The Housing Trust Fund would get $35 million each year. That's also at the Housing Finance Agency. And then local government grants to incentivize strategies to develop more housing and more affordable housing, that would receive $10 million. Looking at building our workforce. So you heard how important it is, because we have fewer people entering that prime working age, that those folks have the skills and the tools they need to be successful in our economy. The governor is recommending a number of programs in this space. First is to fund, you've heard this from the community colleges, Propel NC at $40 million a year. This is training in high demand skills that are aligned with business needs. The governor is proposing free community college for anyone pursuing a credential. So anyone who's not in a degree-based program would receive free community college to pursue the credential. Usually these are shorter term programs, but it would provide that at no charge. Funding for the healthcare workforce. We know there's a shortage with our healthcare workforce, so funding around direct care workers, nurses, training, as well as other healthcare professionals. He has a robust package around work-based learning grants and apprenticeships, as well as NC Career Launch, which is a rural-based apprenticeship program for rural youth, and then also reentry. We have a lot of strong evidence around reentry and lowering recidivism rates when those folks participate in educational programming. We know that if you get an associate's degree while you're in a correctional facility, your recidivism rate drops to 14%. If you get a bachelor's degree, it drops below 6%. And if you get a master's degree, it drops to almost 0. So we know that these programs work. They're better for the individuals, justice-involved individuals, and they're better for our society, put more folks out in the workforce. Governor also looked at unemployment insurance. You've heard some of this from the House. It's a similar proposal, not quite the same. He increases the max unemployment benefit to $470 a week. Our current benefit is 42nd in the nation and has not increased in the last 12 years. He extends the period of eligibility to 16 weeks to more align with how long folks are out of work. Our current period of just 12 weeks is the shortest in the nation. And he also says if the unemployment rate spikes, the number of weeks that you receive will increase proportionally. And he provides the one-time quarterly tax credit for those businesses paying unemployment insurance taxes. Our UI trust fund is at almost $5 billion. It will continue to grow even under these changes, eventually reaching in the next few years more than $7 billion. Keeping North Carolinians safe. You heard the governor speak about the need to combat crime and drugs, particularly fentanyl and opioids. So there's funding in this budget to treat opioid use disorder in correctional facilities, as well as fentanyl control prosecutors at DOJ and a unit at the SBI. He also invests the settlement funds we have, almost $74 million, in targeted programs for overdose prevention, treatment, and similar uses. He provides funding for co-responder teams. These will be 50 new teams in rural areas of the state to go in together. This is usually a social worker or similar who goes in with a police officer to do crisis de-escalation. This is a proven program that we know helps reduce violence and reduce arrest rates. And then firearm safety, continuing the NC Safe campaign and making sure there's funding there for gun locks and other safety measures to keep kids away from guns. Recruiting and retaining law enforcement. So correctional officers and youth counselors are those folks who work at our juvenile facilities, will get a 6.5% pay raise. It will bring their starting pay to over $40,000. Other public safety personnel who are on those statutory pay plans will get a 3% pay raise. I'm going to talk about all state employees in a moment. And then there's bonuses to attract new employees. So when folks complete their basic law enforcement training and they take a job in the state, they will get a $5,000 bonus. That job could be with a local police force or it could be with a state force, but either way they'll get that $5,000 bonus. And then also a bonus to those who come with out-of-state certified transfers who move into the state from out-of-state. Also bonuses for National Guard referrals and extensions. National Guard recruitment is down almost 35% over the last decade. So funding to bring people in, attract them into it, and then also to get them to stay as needed. The governor's proposing body cameras for all field-based state law enforcement. You might be surprised to know that not all field-based state law enforcement have body cameras, and so there is funding in this budget to make sure that they all have that. And then recurring stable funding for the Viper network. That is the first responder system that's used by all emergency folks in the state, incredibly important during Hurricane Helene, and we know that it's an infrastructure that needs to be maintained and be invested in. Finally, turning to operational excellence and some other areas of highlights. The Impact Center, I'm excited about this one. This would be $20 million in non-recurring funding to the Office of State Budget and Management to expand on our ability to improve services, identify waste, and streamline operations. This builds on something that's been happening at OSBM over the last almost decade, and really builds and strengthens on those efforts, as well as new initiatives out of Governor Stein's office so that we can streamline state government and make services better for the people of our state. There's a lot of technology investments to improve efficiency in services, including a constituent portal, so that folks can go to sort of a one-stop shop when they need to interact with state government. DMV ID verification, a new statewide budget system, continuing to fund the statewide HR system. The state banking system at the Treasurer's Office needs updates, and DEQ's permit transformation program so that they can bring all those permits online. All these and many more systems, we have to keep up with investing in these critical IT systems, as well as, what you don't see on this slide, there's some additional funding for state employees, doing things like internal audit, HR, grants managers, and data analysts. That's across the spectrum. Every time that a new department is created, the General Assembly has been splitting up agencies. They have to be staffed properly, or they just can't do their job. And so there's sufficient funding in there to make sure that all of those sort of behind-the-scenes operations are well-funded with the levels that they need. So state employees, the state's most valuable asset, most of what our budget goes to is our state employees. So a 2% raise for state employees, plus an additional $1,000 bonus, and also provides funding for the Labor Market Adjustment Reserve. You've heard about this over the last few years, or the LMAR, as some people call it. This is funding where agencies can invest targeted money for those hard-to-fill positions or other in-demand positions, or those that have fallen below market rate. And then also a 2% one-time COLA for state retirees. The governor also looked at enhancing benefits, so making it a more attractive place to work. So more vacation leave, you heard that mentioned, as well as increased funding to the state health plan. You've heard a lot about the state health plan and the shortfalls that they are facing. So the governor invests there so that a smaller portion will have to be paid by state employees to make up that deficit that they have. And then there's also a proposal to renovate some state facilities to allow child care providers to come in and use that space to help with our child care crisis, both across the state and also for state employees in particular. In the transportation space, we all know that Helene recovery is top of mind for DOT. They also are concerned with the ferry system, and so this is money to modernize Mann's Harbor Shipyard, as well as ferry maintenance and equipment, so they can improve service and reduce wait times for ferries. And then, of course, improving the DMV customer experience. So you heard a little bit about the IT systems that are needed, but also funding new DMV offices and adding 85 additional examiners. Highway construction and maintenance, you can see the additional funding that's going to go into those, as well as additional funding going into the maintenance reserve. Capital investments, the governor does continue putting money into the SCIF and continues a number of projects that are already ongoing. Of particular note for folks today, I'll just call out state park access, particularly getting into Chimney Rock State Park, storm and flood mitigation projects across eastern North Carolina, rural health care centers, adult corrections. There's a lot of funding needed there for facility improvements and security upgrades, including their fire systems and their HVAC. And then the UNC Children's Hospital, continuing on that commitment to build the North Carolina Children's Hospital, and then funding for Safer Schools training facility down at Samarkand. And then looking at having a healthy North Carolina. So what are some of the investments we made in health and human services? We're going to leverage the state's Medicaid waiver. For those of you who are familiar, that's the 1115 waiver that you might have heard talk of. And we're going to leverage both state and federal dollars to spend that money. So we will be looking at healthy opportunities, continuing that in the 3 regions where it is right now, as well as expanding it to the remaining Western North Carolina counties. This has been shown to improve health outcomes and eventually lower cost. There's money for rural and community health clinics, and then money to increase access to OBGYN care by increasing those provider rates for OBGYNs. There's also funding for innovation waiver slots and traumatic brain injury waiver slots as well. As we think about federal uncertainty, Medicaid is certainly one that's on everyone's top of mind. So looking at Medicaid's positive impact on North Carolina, we've had more than 640,000 people now have health insurance because they have enrolled due to Medicaid expansion. The impact has been the greatest in our rural counties. More than 1/3 of expansion enrollees live there. It also provides financial stability for our rural hospitals. We have 2.5 million North Carolinians who are enrolled in regular Medicaid, so it's more than 3 million North Carolinians who are dependent upon Medicaid for their health care needs. Let's remember that Medicaid covers 50% of all births in this state. It covers 40% of children in our state and over 60% of our residents in nursing homes. So our most vulnerable among us are dependent upon this program that has questionable funding and a lot of discussion going on in DC right now. Most enrollees who would, if they lost their Medicaid, would either become unenrolled or completely underinsured. So I'm going to kind of wrap things up, and then I'm happy to take questions. As we look back at what did Governor Stein would do with those reserves, he's actually going to put more money in the State Emergency Response and Disaster Relief Reserve. He's taking a little bit of money out. You can see on that Federal Infrastructure Match Reserve. He's going to provide OSBM access to that so that as federal uncertainty comes up, we can stabilize for that. He brings the unappropriated reserve balance up to $8 billion. Of course, House Bill 47 is pending, and that would take money from some of these same reserves, but you can kind of see where we're situated with the governor's budget with this. So overall, this budget balances. It provides a sustainable path forward. It does not raise taxes. It cuts the tax burden on working families. It adds to our already strong set of reserves. And it invests in North Carolina, both the people and also the state employees, and all of the wonderful areas that you just heard about to make sure that we can stay a growing, leading state for all of our people. So with that, I am happy to take questions. Gary.
I've got 3 really short questions.
Okay.
So the 2% for rank and file employees is over 2 years.
It's 2% in the first year.
Just in the first year?
Yes.
You make a decision on the second year?
Right now, with the uncertainty that there is in the second year, we thought it was prudent to, in a lot of areas, only make a recurring investment in the first year.
Okay. On the teacher pay, I look at page 7, and it talks about the highest starting teacher pay in the Southeast. It says that in 2027, under the governor's budget, it would reach $53,000. What is it right now for an opening teacher? Is it 41?
It's on the bottom.
No, it says 42,804. That's not what I'm asking?
That's including local supplements.
Well, the 53,000, would that be including local?
Yes.
So what is year 0 with the salary schedule? What is the year 0 now, and what would it be in the second year?
I'll get that for you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
And then finally, what is the bottom line? Because we had a quirky budget situation this fiscal year. What is the bottom line state government budget spending this fiscal year? Could somebody give me is it 32 billion something?
I think it's 31.7, but we'll get it for you. We'll get it for you.
All right.
Is it 31.7, Ed? Yes, it's 31.7. And that's the operating budget. Remember, peeled off the top of that is money for SCIF, money that goes over to DOT. DOT is not included in that 31.7.
So what's the total number we all?
Yes, yes.
What's the total number you're calling to spend, though?
The total number that the governor is calling to spend in the first year of the biennium is 33.6, and in the second is 34.3. If I don't have my readers.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
had a very niche one that some people in Western North Carolina might care about. For the Chimney Rock funding, that's the only state park in the state that requires admission for ticketed entry, I believe. Is there any benefit taxpayers get as far as lower admission costs, or any discussion of that as part of taxpayers footing the bill for this?
So that is not something that I've looked at, but we'd be happy to get back with you. Anything, we don't make money off of that. It just would go to the functioning of the park. There's no excess revenue from that. It just offsets some of the expenses there. But we can definitely get with our Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
And then for starting teacher pay, looking at the tables, I know the governor said he wants it to be the highest in the Southeast. I believe Florida's is like 47,500 or somewhere in that range. Why go to 53,000, which is well above that?
Because as we look, and maybe I should just go back to that slide. So when we do this analysis, when the analysts in my office do this work, they know we don't assume that everyone else stays flat. So we assume they're right that they will have some sort of increases as well. And so we're trying to stay ahead of that, and we base that, I believe, on their annual averages. And so it'd be a little disingenuous to assume that everybody else is going to stay level and then we shot past them. But
if you look at, I wanted to just clarify what Brian and Gary were saying. So the table says that starting the number's lower. So like what he's saying for the 53,000 is assuming that there are counties giving supplements or from the rural counties.
yes.
And so he doesn't have control of that. I mean, as far as
That's true, but he does have control because the state actually now gives an appropriation to rural counties to increase the supplement, and that is maintained in this budget. So yeah, it's actually the largest counties who do a supplement, and they pay for it themselves. But this is the way people have shown teacher pay for years. I mean, this is just, usually the supplements are included. And we could give you the same table without the supplements if that was of interest. But that's the way teachers typically think of it too, because they're counting on those.
And like have both numbers.
Yes. Yep.
You stumped us.
Yes.
Just for the impact center, just to be clear on it, is that something that's currently operating and running, or is that something you're saying, hey, legislature, give us $20 million so we can create this?
So a hybrid of those. So this is ongoing. This builds on work that OSBM has been doing with it, where we have found money to do it for years. And so what this does is infuse this with money so that we can really start to make a bigger impact. I talked with House Oversight a couple of weeks ago, and I say this all the time. We right now operate off of a coalition of the willing. So, and I mean that not just because state agencies are reluctant to participate. We work with all the state agencies, Council of State, Cabinet, et cetera, and nobody wants to run a program that doesn't work. Nobody's in this business to do that. Everybody wants their programs to be successful, to be based on evidence, but do they have the capacity to step back and analyze that program? Do they have the data to know how to analyze that program? Do they know where to go to get the research so that they can see if they're running the most effective and efficient program in the country? Usually the answer to that is no. And when I say coalition of the willing, I don't even mean that they're refusing to participate with us. It's more like, we would love to do that, but we don't have any time. This is a program supposed to be run by 12 people. I've only got 8 people in it. I just can't ask them to do one more thing, even though that sounds really valuable. Can you all do it for us? And we say, yeah, we can do a little bit, but we can't do the whole thing for you. So this provides the funding that we need to bring in those resources to help people see that, and also to do some broader scale work. You heard the governor mention looking at state facilities, looking at state contracting, et cetera. So really looking at things holistically that might be outside of just any one agency. So this was based on a successful model, actually, that Governor Youngkin had in Virginia. He started, I believe it's an innovation center, and so I believe that's the name they have for it. And it was started, I think, with the same amount of money. It was $15 or $20 million as well.
Can you expand? I was looking at the presentation of the overall proposal about the correction officers' raises. He had mentioned in the State of the State Law Enforcement too. Is that a separate higher raise? And the youth counselors, where exactly do they work?
So correctional officers and youth counselors. Youth counselors are essentially correctional officers at juvenile facilities, but their title is youth counselors. They would all get 6.5%. So they're on a pay scale, and that pay scale, all the steps of that would go up 6.5%. Other public safety folks would get 3%, so that's in contrast to the 2%. So if you're on a pay scale, you also don't get access to that LMAR funding. Now we're really getting in the weeds, but so that allows for a little bit of differentiation there, because they're getting 3% automatically instead of the 2%. And then the basic law enforcement training bonus is the other thing that's out there for law enforcement. So when folks complete basic law enforcement training and then take a job in North Carolina in law enforcement, they'd be paid that bonus.
I know I'm simplifying this, but when I'm looking at the big picture here, it seems like how you get to continue to spend more money in both the first and the second year, particularly the second year, is you stop the further tax cuts, and then you also, in exchange for stopping, basically stopping vouchers, you instead invest in teacher pay. I mean, is that kind of a 30,000?
That's a fair way to say it, I think, yes.
All right, thank you.
For the cell phone ban that Stein said he wanted, I was looking through the budget, and it says this budget funds a grant program to help districts implement strategies to limit cell phone use and an evaluation study to see which strategies work best. So is the governor wanting to ban it or limit it?
So the governor's proposed a ban on it in his State of the State, and the General Assembly is working on a bill for that. But what this money does is sort of see, it's one thing to say you're going to do that, and it's another to recognize that kids are kids. And so how are you actually going to do that? There's some innovative things out there, like pouches that students can put their phone in, so then it actually even shuts down the signal. So those types of things. The governor's not proposing any one solution to that, but he wants to have funding available so that school districts could apply for that money, and then we could also go and evaluate and say which one of these is really working the best. Is it the pouches? Is it some other way? You know, what's the best way to actually, when the rubber hits the road, you know, I've got 2 teenagers myself, so it's one thing to say you can't have your phone, and they always are coming up with new ways around that, right? So.
And Brian, we can go deeper with you on that if that's of interest. All right, any more questions? All right. Thank you, folks.
Yes.
The new tax cuts, wouldn't that kind of, but why add those if he's worried about freezing the other tax cuts? Because that's recurring.
Yes, so the governor is focused on tax fairness and who should be paying those taxes and who should get the benefit of tax cuts, and recognizes there's a burden on working families. So that's what those tax cuts do. And then, you know, we've talked about this, but the personal income tax, 50% of the benefit from that tax cut goes to less than 10% of taxpayers. And so it's those making more than $200,000 a year. And so this freezes those taxes. Those folks won't pay any more in income tax, but it stabilizes us so we have sufficient revenue to provide all the things that people look for when they look at North Carolina. So. Thank you all.